And then eventually, the neural network says, oh, this is a cat and this is not now. It's a black box system, which means that we know that it's learned what a cat is, but we cannot tell you because it's not procedural. It's not like when you write computer code.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. I know we're proud of the medicine that we practice, and for sure, it has a unique capacity to engage and interact with patients on profound and integrated levels. We've all seen what looks like a miracle cure. We've experienced how a patient walks differently out of a treatment room, having reconnected with their vitality. That said, we have got to stop with this nonsense about how our medicine is superior because we treat the body, the mind, and the spirit. We've got to step away from comparing what we have to offer with the brokenness of the conventional medical system. And it's unhelpful to hold ourselves in high esteem while dismissing pharmaceuticals as nothing more than the product of a corrupt system. Or, due to feeling insecure, cherry-pick stories to elevate ourselves above a medicine and a system that truthfully many of us would love to integrate with and be a part of. Let me begin with that I'm a total fanboy of East Asian medicine. I appreciate it because it reliably assists me to understand and to help others. It's got a good toolkit, and I think it's pretty cool and fun to use. It can be darned effective as well. But here's where we need some discernment. It's not inherently a superior medicine. As my 8th grade shop teacher, Mr. Bicel, constantly admonished us, right tool for the right job, boys. And so it is with medicine. What is the superior medicine? I think it's the one that the patient needs at any particular moment in time. Look, I'm pretty good with helping people with heart palpitations, and I've seen acupuncture regulate a skippy pulse. But if there's a life-threatening coronary artery blockage, then our pals with the catheters, stents, and thank God anesthetic are the people that you want to see. For those who are not interested in changing their diet, but instead are looking for a way to eat and drink as they'd like and shore themselves up from the ravages of high blood sugar, yes, metformin and other diabetic drugs are going to do a whole lot more for them and at a cheaper price than acupuncture and herbs. I think that we all agree that for pretty much any life-threatening emerging condition, conventional Western medicine is nothing short of miraculous. And unless you've got spirit-level pulse diagnostic ability or superhero osteopathic palpation skills, you're probably not going to get a reliable image of what's going on inside of the body in terms of structure as you would with modern imaging technologies. They're truly amazing. Really, while yes, there are issues with the conventional medical delivery system, and there are issues with corruption and institutional capture, there are conditions where modern biomedicine has the team that you want to be seeing. It doesn't help us as a profession or as individuals to run down modern medicine as a way to try to elevate our toolbox and methods. First, because it throws fuel on the fire of hubris, which is just asking for trouble. And second, because our job is to help patients as best we can and to recognize when our kit doesn't have the best tool for a particular job. There's no one medicine that treats everything. And likewise, there are people who prefer chemical support instead of a change in lifestyle or habit. For sure, many people would be helped with what we have to offer if they changed their mind about how they thought about health and well-being. And while I understand the desire to educate them, I'm a bit allergic to any kind of proselytizing. What's the best way to convince people to try acupuncture? For sure, it's not ranting about the deficiencies of the conventional system, That's like having people knock on your door and share the good news about their belief system with you. No, I think our medicine grows into the culture as it has ever since immigrants from China landed here in what they call the beautiful country. It comes from helping people and then those patients telling their friends and their family. Speaking unfavorably about another person, culture, or medicine, more often than not, it will cast a bad light on you. Talking up what you have to offer, too often it can be perceived as bragging or pushy sales. But other people talking about the work you do, the curious way the medicine you offer has been helpful, that is more likely to create a receptive curiosity in those who would benefit from what we have to offer. I don't know anyone who doesn't have some resistance to an attempt to be educated into a new point of view, especially when negativity is employed. But an invitation to curiosity and perhaps a bit of adventure, that might get some traction. And beyond that, respect for where a person is. It's essential. Nobody likes to be proven wrong. Mr. Bicel, with his geeky safety glasses and flat-top haircut, he truly is in my pantheon of influential teachers. Right tool for the right job, boys, was a reminder that we loved to laugh at. But over the years, it truly has stuck with me. It stuck because he was right. And this principle is widely and reliably applied across disciplines and endeavors. I've always loved tools. From the feeler gauges I used to set the clearances on my old air-cooled VW, to the quality of the set of socket wrenches I have now, where the sockets click oh so satisfyingly into place, to the smooth click of the keyboard I type on every day. I love tools. I love how they extend my senses and my capacity. And so I get excited when there's a new tool in town. This one doesn't come with an instruction manual, and it's a cross between hardcore computer code, neural nets, a roulette table, and a fractal kaleidoscopic database. I'm not sure just what artificial intelligence might be. Is it an adjunctive imagination add-on to human creativity? An interactive database of synthesized genius? Could it be a Trojan horse of easy answers that hides a more profound, unfelt tether of social control? Just what is this new tool that has rolled into town? I sat down to explore AI with a computer scientist turned acupuncturist, Vanessa Menendez-Covelo. 20 years ago, she was working on something like what we'd be calling AI today. And as it is with all of us, you don't throw your past away. It finds its way into the present moment in new and curiously inviting ways. We'll be discussing the science of artificial intelligence, how it can be a tool that assists you in your work as an acupuncturist, and what the unwritten future just might look like. Imagine for a moment that you might be able to sit down with a synthetic Huang Di and bring your own Qibor questions about life, the universe, and everything. Regardless of your feelings about technology, I think you'll enjoy this lively and provocative conversation. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Vanessa Menendez-Covelo, welcome back to Qiological.
Hello. Thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
I'm happy to have you. I can't even remember when it was that you were here. If I was a better podcast host, I'd have all that written down, but it was a while ago.
It was. I think it was on the back of the pandemic. And I think I was talking about how I had just graduated 3 months before the pandemic and how I was in a practice.
Yes, that's right. That's worth listening to. Beginning pandemic time.
Yeah. Strange times.
And now we've got a whole different set of challenges in our world because the world likes to give humans challenges. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, AI. You reached out to me and said you had some things to say about it. And as we were talking just before hitting record, you said, oh God, I hope people aren't going to throw stones at me for this. And I'm thinking to myself, why would they throw stones at you for talking about something that's present, it's real? Anyone connected to the internet, it will touch their life. Why would they throw stones at you? Because you've got a glimpse of this.
Yeah, it's a complex topic. I mean, I got really excited about AI in the last year because I used to work on AI, but we're talking about 20 years ago.
That's right. You spent time in the computer world in a very deep, geeky way. I knew that you were in the computer world. I didn't remember that you were working on AI.
Yes. So at the time, we didn't even use that word. It was the computer lab. What was it? Speech, vision, and robotics lab at the University of Cambridge. So we didn't use the words AI so much. We didn't say, oh, this is artificial intelligence. But basically, at the time, and I need to expand later on what do we mean by intelligence. So at the time, we were thinking, what are the things that humans can do and computers cannot? And computers at the time couldn't see images and recognize them. They couldn't understand speech, and they couldn't walk around and do things. So those were the interests in the lab. I was in the speech group, so we were basically trying to work. At the time, I was interested in transcription systems, but it was everything. There were also a lot of summarizing, conversational, all sorts of different areas. But it was very, very difficult. We didn't have the compute power that we do at the moment. And then after about 5 years of working in the field, I kind of pivoted into some other area of technology. And then I kind of forgot about speech recognition because it kind of blurred into the background. And Dragon Dictate, I don't know if you remember it, but
I remember that. That was the big one that people were astonished at it because you could transcribe with 92% accuracy or something, which was high back in those days.
Yes, but you know what the funny thing is? Because we were working in that kind of system when I did a master's degree on that. And then I went and one of my professors left university to build a speech recognition company. So our systems they still exist. They are the systems that transcribe CNN News and BBC News. And I ended up almost hating them because it was received pronunciation. It was a very specific, either British or American male accent. So I was absolutely not allowed to test our system because a Spanish woman with a Spanish accent was just never going to work.
Right, because they were going for the majority of the news broadcasters at that time, and that's what it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now this stuff is so damn good. I can set my phone to Chinese to send a text, and I can speak my really lousy Mandarin into it, and it mostly gets it.
Yeah, now I'll tell you something scary that I was reading today because now I'm completely plugged into this world because I got the enthusiasm back for it. And this touches the topic of, is AI good or bad? And the answer, in my opinion, is that it is a tool. And like any tool, you can use it for good or bad. So what I heard today or read it somewhere is that there's a system that's been sold to companies that have call centers. A lot of service companies have call centers in India. And apparently people, let's say in the UK, don't always like speaking to people in these call centers because they find the Indian accent difficult to understand.
Same here in the States.
So there's a company now that uses AI to erase the Indian accent and turn it into your, classical American accent or classical British accent. Is this a good or is it a bad thing?
So if I had this software, I could take my voice as we're talking and have the AI turn it into a posh Oxford accent.
That's the idea. And that was an idea.
Oh my God.
So that was an idea that we had 20 years ago. One of our goals was to do the, what's it called? Sorry. When you go, the karaoke. We wanted to do a karaoke system where you would sing with the voice of Frank Sinatra. But if you can't sing, then it would be Frank Sinatra singing really poorly.
Wow. That would still be kind of fun.
Yeah. So you see, I like that use. I like the karaoke. I'm not that thrilled about removing someone's accent because as someone who does have a foreign accent when I speak English, years ago I had a bit of a complex about it. I really tried to erase it. And then I got to a point of acceptance of thinking, well, I am Spanish. Of course I'm going to speak with a Spanish accent. There's nothing wrong with that.
True. And again, for a call center, you're trying to get questions answered. if the accent is in the way of communication and the job is communication, okay, it's like I need glasses to read. So maybe people need accent filters to hear.
Yes, and I see one of the big good uses of AI is to remove barriers.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so this is a personal story. So I live in a Victorian house in North London, and we had a tree outside our house that started digging underneath our house. So at some point we had cracks that were about, I don't know, a couple of inches in our front wall. And the cracks went around the window. And I thought, oh my God, our bay window is going to fall. So I sent several letters to our council, our local council that was supposed to kind of deal with that, ignored. So these were letters from Vanessa Menendez-Covelo. You know, I'm fluent in English, so I wrote correct English. Nothing ever happened. But then my husband, who's Welsh, I can't say English, he's Welsh, it's very important, and has a PhD from Oxford University, wrote a very British letter expressing how extremely disappointed he was with the lack of resolution in this matter. And then things moved.
Oh, you have to speak the language. I mean, all communication works this way. This is why couples fight so often and why generations don't understand each other. Because what is said is not always what is received. And what's important is what is received.
Yes, so now I can go into ChatGPT and I can say, I need to write a letter to my council. This is the problem I'm having. These are the dates when it started. And please write in a very formal, very British manner. And bang, in 5 seconds, I've got that letter perfectly pitched to get a result.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It absolutely is. And in my mind, it just removes that barrier because as acupuncturists, quite often we have to send a letter to the patient's GP. And we don't always feel equipped to pitch the letter at that right level where we get seen, we get taken seriously by the GPs, but at the same time, we make it clear that, that we are not a Western medical doctor. There is a specific kind of like pitch that you have to achieve. And ChatGPT can do that for you beautifully.
This is so interesting because I'm thinking on one hand, and you said this earlier, right? I'm a Spanish woman with a Spanish accent. This is me. We have our identity. I don't have any qualms with that. We're humans. That's the way it works. Sometimes, and I've seen this a lot lately in our world, people are standing up because this is my identity and you should respect me. Okay, but if you need to get the cracks in your window fixed, do you want to stand up as, I'm the Spanish woman and you should pay attention because I have cracks in my house? Or do you want to pitch that letter in a way where they go, oh, this poor person has cracks in their house. We don't care who that person is. They kind of seem like us, so good enough. That's a really interesting psychological shift to be able to say, I am okay with using a way of communicating that works for the person who's receiving the communication. It doesn't matter who I am. It matters what gets done.
Absolutely.
How's that been for you to let that go and say, ChatGPT, be the voice that gets listened to? What's that like for you?
It's okay. So I teach point location at a college in London. And obviously we get trained on how to teach. Teaching is not necessarily natural for everyone. You get a lot of training on how to teach. And then you learn how different students absorb the information in different ways. And sometimes it's a lot of work because sometimes, I have to think, okay, some students are going to learn by watching me, some students are going to learn by listening to me, and some students are going to learn by my notes. So if I can get any AI that helps me in any of these ways, then I'm going to use that.
Right, because the job, sure, but the goal, more importantly, is to be effective.
Yes, and the thing is, so identity is a bit like, we need to be who we are, but at the same time, if we can tune our communication so that it helps communication itself, then why not?
If there's anything I've learned from practicing Chinese medicine, it's been that who I think I am, the beliefs I have, the opinions I have, don't matter in the clinic. Zero. There's zero helpful in the clinic. What's important in the clinic is to communicate effectively with my patient. I have to understand who they are, and it's my job to be able to shapeshift as best I can so that there's as little barrier as possible between us. Then I've got a shot at helping them.
Absolutely. You are not going to talk to the teenage boy the same way that you talk to the 70-year-old grandma. You just don't. So why not do that through letters to GPs or any kind of written communication? I see it the same.
Yeah. How else are you using this? I love your example. Oh my gosh. I'm sure I'm going to find a way to use that in the near future too. How else do you find it being helpful for you?
Okay, so I write all my clinical notes using ChatGPT.
Oh.
I love it. Because...
How do you do it? Is it listening to you and then transcribing?
No. I know some people do that, actually. I don't know if they use ChatGPT. I was told about something started with H. Helga, maybe? I don't know. I'm traumatized by systems listening to me because of the story with my accent. But usually when I take the case, when I chat to my patient, I've got a small iPad and I type everything. I type really quickly because I was a computer programmer for 20 years. So I just type really quickly, really unobtrusively, and then I put the iPad away and I do my thing. I have a diagnosis in my mind, I have a treatment plan, and I have a point selection. The point selection might change as I'm doing my needling, as it happens. And then that's it. The needling is done, the patient's resting, and I am out of the way. And then I go back to my iPad and I type the points I chose. So at this point, we have the consultation. So we have the symptoms, they've told us how they're doing, etc. We have probably tongue and pulse information, very important. And then we have the points. But we don't have the diagnosis written down or the treatment plan. But ChatGPT or DeepSeek, which is the Chinese one, which is even better, will do that for you.
Oh, okay. That's a whole other issue. We'll get into that later. But yeah.
Yeah. So in ChatGPT, I have the paid version. There's one specific GPT called Acupuncture Master. I paste all my information without any identifying. So you have to be HIPAA compliant. You have to be GDPR compliant. But I paste the information. And then I say, please give me in bullet points, treatment plan, diagnosis, treatment plan, and please justify the points I've used. Bam. And then you copy and paste.
Okay. Is it actually how you think?
So my experience so far is that when I do that, because I've already done the point selection, ChatGPT kind of retrofits that into into a diagnosis and treatment plan. It doesn't always get it fully right. And this is something that's important to know, that you cannot just hand over the responsibility of your notes to ChatGPT. You have to review it. So I always end up adjusting it a little bit. But still, it saved me a bunch of time. There's also this thing, I don't know if you've heard about it in the context of AI, called hallucinations.
Oh, I've run into it. There's times because I'll have it write my show notes these days. And sometimes it will put something in and I go, I don't think that's what the person said. And I'll go back to GPT and I'll say, please show me where in the transcript the guest said that. And they go, oh, sorry, my mistake. It's like, you friggin' liar. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very funny how it apologizes very politely, says, oops, my bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that is one case. Now, you can take this as far as you want. My main problem is that I need my days to have 36 hours because so many things to do. So, for example, I use Clinico as my customer relationship management tool. Yeah.
Okay. So
Clinico is a tool where you write your notes and you've got your schedule for your week and everything. And Clinico has an API. An API is a way that you can communicate with the internal engine programmatically. So instead of through the browser, you can send it computer instructions and get information back. So you could, if you are a little bit of a coder, you could basically use ChatGPT to write code that connects to Clinico, and then you could say something like, ChatGPT, what are the illnesses that I treat the most often? Do I mostly do gynae? Do I do fertility? Do I do muscle injuries? What is it that I do the most? ChatGPT, what is the average number of treatments I use to fix a frozen shoulder?
What are the usual diagnoses for frozen shoulder?
Exactly. And what I actually love to do is when I come out of clinic and I'm like, you know what? I'm really not sure about what I did there. I'm not sure. I feel a bit.
It's funny how that happens, right? You do a treatment and you're like, this seems right. What is it? I'm having a hard time describing what I just did.
Yeah. So I take that to ChatGPT and I said, what do you think of what I did here? And it will come up with suggestions.
Okay. I'm kind of a computer geek too. So I find this stuff really interesting. Here's a concern that I have for it. And again, because we had a conversation, I don't think we recorded this part of the conversation about do on the boots. I don't think we recorded that.
No.
No, we didn't. All right, let me just give a quick little backstory. I've been listening to a podcast, and there was a guy who decided to put his cell phone down for 7 weeks. He was an Instagram influencer, by the way. He decided to put his cell phone down for 7 weeks and see what life was like. He went and lived with monks, and he went and lived with the Amish. And when living with the Amish, there was a time where they had to cut the hay, but they had to wait till the hay was dry before they could cut it. So every morning he'd go out with the farmer and feel the hay to see if it's ready to cut. And there was a morning he went out and he felt it and he was like, oh, this is it. I can feel the dryness in it. You could actually feel it because he'd been paying attention to it with his own sensorium. And then he looks at the sky and he sees there are thunderclouds and he says to the farmer, you can't cut that today because it's going to rain. And the farmer says, look at your boots. And the guy's like, what? Look at my boots. And he looks at his boots. He goes, yeah, they're dusty. And the farmer says, no, look at your boots. And he looks again at his boots. He goes, they're a little bit wet. There's some moisture. And the farmer says, when there's dew on the boots, it's not going to rain because he's been a farmer, as was his father and his father. And he knows from the experience of being in nature, when there's dew on your boots, it ain't going to rain that day. And they cut the hay. It did not rain. So here's one of the things for me. And again, I love technology. I am not technophobic in any way, shape, or form. But as a student, as a person learning, how do we teach people to notice the dew on their boots when they can easily go to something like GPT and give an answer that Zhang Zhongjing would have given, and they'll be right, and they'll pass their test, and they'll pass their boards, but they won't know about dew on their boots. They won't know. My concern is they will not know the medicine because you have to live into the medicine. You can't search the medicine. You have to build the medicine within your own sensorium.
Absolutely. And so I recently was published by the Journal of Chinese Medicine, an article called AI a Manifesto, where I was talking about this, particularly because in the context of the UK where I live, here acupuncture is not licensed. You don't have to pass boards. Anyone can call themselves an acupuncturist. So my concern was, what's going to stop a physio, an osteopath, a massage therapist, anyone that can read the description of a point location? What's going to stop them from then calling themselves an acupuncturist? And they are not going to have the lived experience of someone who went to 3 years of a licentiate school at a high level and then is constantly thinking about the medicine. And my conclusion is we cannot stop this. Well, we should. I personally think that we should go for state regulation, but that's a difficult. It's a huge thing to achieve. So let's put that to the side. We cannot stop technological progress. This is going to happen, but I think we have the opportunity or even the obligation to elevate ourselves above it. So I think of ChatGPT, DeepSeek, all of this as a very nice, very keen, slightly dumb assistant. That's going to go.
Kind of smart, but kind of dumb.
Yeah, because it's going to go and look up the things, when you are like, oh, there was this thing that I read in Dead Man, a while ago that spoke about this issue that I'm looking at, but I can't remember it. And then you have to go to Dead Man and try to remember, was it by Meridian? Where did you find it? But you can ask ChatGPT, which then again leads me to the question of where did all that data that ChatGPT got trained on, and was that legally acquired?
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Well, yeah, look, there's all kinds of intellectual property issues and copyright issues. I remember asking it recently to do a graphic for me because I needed a graphic for the podcast. And I said, do it in the style of, and I mentioned a painter. And it says, can't do that. Right? It wouldn't copy Jackson Pollock for me. But if I said, give me like a modern art, blah, 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 and name the style, then it would do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is all of that. And at the same time, we want to get paid for our work. But increasingly, and this has been ever since the printing press, really, when you could take a story and copy it, and then you get Xerox machines, and then you get computers, and information just wants to get freer and freer and freer. And it's very difficult to control that. I don't think you can. I think with digital technology, information truly wants to be free. And it increasingly is. I don't know how we take our world of things and laws and copyrights and put that in the digital world. I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do because you have background in the trade. What do you see happening with that?
Well, unfortunately, my view on that is a little bit negative because, let me organize my thoughts. So the most important thing by far is not actually the technology, because all the different companies are about up there at the same level of technology, is the training data. The quality of the training data is going to pretty much determine the quality of the output. So my fear is that we're going to create a two-tier world where the wealthier people have access to the better AIs that are trained with better data, and everyone else will get the slop. Have you heard about the slop?
Slop? No, but it's kind of how the world works. Things are distributed very unevenly, and those with resources tend to get better resources.
Yeah, so the slop is basically the content that AI is generating without a lot of quality control. So there are a lot of some sort of internet publishing companies that are using AIs to generate really not high quality content, but content that still gets consumed and gives them some sort of profit. So because these engines, these large language models got trained mostly on the contents on the internet, there's going to be a point where the input is going to be majority their own output.
So there's going to be more hallucinations in that. There's going to be more false data. There's going to be more probably bias that's creeping into that. And the people that consume it think that, well, this is the answer and this is real.
Yeah, so in the end, we're going to end up working for the robots because we're going to be the people actually having to sift through the data to see whether that's data that's good enough to be sent to a training model or not.
Talk to me about training an AI. I hear about this, but I have no idea what it means. I suspect it's more than just feeding data into it. How do you train your robot?
Yes. Okay. So going back 20 years, which is when I was more plugged in, I'm not that deep into the details of how it works today. But at the time, the idea that someone had was to replicate neurons. So basically, we know how the brain works. Well, to a certain extent, we know that the brain is composed of neurons and then the neurons fire. And when you process the same information over and over again, a certain pathway, the same pathway gets lit up and then kind of becomes prominent. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Are you saying that they're creating neural nets with software?
Exactly. So that's what we did. So we were like, right, we're going to create something that behaves like, like a bunch of neurons. And then the first, one of the first examples was image recognition. So how do you get the computer to know what is a cat? You have that neural network and you say image, cat, image, cat, image, cat, image. This is not a cat. Image, cat, image, not cat, cat, not cat, cat, not cat, cat, not cat. Because as well, we thought that that's how little kids learn, by repetition. And then eventually the neural network says, oh, this is a cat and this is not now. It's a black box system, which means that we know that it's learned what a cat is, but we cannot tell you because it's not procedural. It's not like when you write computer code and you say, if A do B and if B do C, but do not do D and stop when this condition is met. It's a black box. So we know that it can recognize a cat. We have no idea how. And it's definitely not necessarily because it thinks, oh, it's got 4 paws and it's got 2 ears and it meows. It's because it's seen a lot of data and we've taught him for every single item what is a cat and what is not a cat. And there is such thing called overtraining. There's a kind of like pitch perfect amount of data that you input it. Once you go past that, everything's going to be a cat.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's called overtraining.
When you've got a hammer, all your problems look like nails.
Exactly. So that was what we were doing at the time. And then I remember my course that I did, my master's, was co-taught between the engineering department and the computer lab. And the engineering department were mostly concerned with the signal processing, with the phonemes, with the actual audio, while the computer lab was more concerned with the grammar and the sense, the making, the semantics.
Oh, right.
And I ran away from that as fast as I could because they were trying to make it rule-based and it was incredibly complex. Like you try to pull rules because you're like, well, English is a language that has grammar rules, but everyone speaks English in their own ways. So how many exceptions are you willing to program? And it gets into something called lambda calculus that broke my brain. So anyway, those were the computer scientists. The engineers were a bit more pragmatic about it. And they were like, let's just train it statistically again, like let's just use statistics. So it was the nice people at Google that came up with something called the transformer, where basically in a sentence, every word kind of like gets like a score that shows you how well that word fits into the sentence. So for example, if we're talking about jeans, we could be talking about the piece of clothing, or we could be talking about the genome. And how do you know? You know by context. So that's what it is. The transformer is a context scorer in a way. And that is how these large language models work. They don't have an understanding. They don't. It's just pure statistics.
And that is very much how our brains work. I'm not saying our brains are statistical, although maybe they are. I haven't studied it. But repetition and context, I know at least in human communication, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And this is why I was saying, I hope no one throws stones at me, because with this work that I've been doing with AI, some people have got quite upset. They don't like the idea. I think the word artificial intelligence makes them think, oh my God, we're going to be replaced. And also,
Might not be so bad.
yeah.
As far as the planet's concerned, might not be so bad.
Yeah. But also,
For humans, maybe not good. For planet.
But also it raises the question of what is intelligence?
Well, okay, I want to get into this. There's what is intelligence. This word artificial intelligence really bothers me. And it doesn't bother me because I'm thinking robots are taking over the world. The exact thing you said, intelligence. My suspicion, I'm not a computer scientist or a philosopher. I'm just an acupuncturist. But my suspicion is intelligence is just intelligence. In whatever form. The word artificial really bothers me because it connotates something that's not real. And I think this thing is very real. To me, it seems it's more like a synthetic intelligence. Not that it's fake, but that it's synthesized out of many things. Synthetic in that it's synthesized. And that, when I think about it in that way, I get super curious about it, because it's like the way that you can take somebody who lives in one part of the world and marry them to someone in another part of the world, and now the stuff coming out of their kitchen, it's really interesting fusion of different things. It's synthetic, it's synthesized.
Yeah, so I have so many problems with the word intelligence, and it causes a lot of division sometimes. Like, is this person intelligent? Is there not? And for example, not so long ago, if you couldn't write, like, what's that film? The one with the blue eye look. He plays a model, and he's going to open a school for kids who can't read good. So anyway, if you cannot read or write good, you were not intelligent. And now we understand that maybe that person is, well, most likely that person is neurodivergent. Their brain just doesn't work that well, but it's got nothing to do. Sorry, let me repeat that. Their brain doesn't work that way. So they struggle with reading and writing because maybe they've got dyslexia, but you wouldn't think that they are any less intelligent than someone else who doesn't have that somehow, feature of their brain.
Yeah, intelligence is a tricky one. I mean, we all have different capacities, right? Like my younger brother, professional musician his entire life. When he graduated from high school, he was functionally illiterate. He had to go learn how to read before he went to college to get in.
Wow.
Because all he could do was music.
Yeah.
And he did. So and like me, my capacity to do math, you do not want me on an engineering design team for bridges. You really don't. But there's other things I can do. So it seems that we have different kinds of intelligence or capacities or traits. I'm not sure what to call it. But yeah, for sure, saying someone's intelligent or not can get you into trouble. But at the same time, my daughter came home from work the other day. She's working at this restaurant up the street, and she was training a new person. And the new person, there were just certain things very simple things, like change out the creamer in these containers here. And the kid couldn't get it that I do the same thing for each container in a different part of the restaurant. Just couldn't get it. And so there is an aspect of capacity, I guess, to do different sorts of jobs, or maybe a better way to say it is different functions. And some people can really get it, and some people, they're challenged by it.
Yeah, but maybe, as you say, there's different types of intelligence, and maybe adaptability is one aspect. But the thing that really interests me is that we used to say, oh, we are humans are intelligent. And we used to say the proof that we are humans and we're intelligent is that we can use tools. And then we saw monkeys using sticks to do something. And we were like, well, they're primate, they're not that different from us. Okay, we can just about accept that. But then we saw crows doing the same thing. Like they can count to 5. So, but then that again, so because at the end of the day, the basic question really is, what is being human, and do we have some sort of soul? Is that what differentiates us from the computers and also from other beings, other sentient beings?
Okay. That's a great question, which we're probably not going to get answered, but we can certainly dig into it, because that's a great question. I have discovered something in using GPT that has been very surprising, because I've been asking it to help me with some writing. I'm having it do certain parts of the show notes at this point. A lot of the writing I do on my own because I like to write, but there's some stuff that's, I'm going to say, mechanical, that I don't need to waste my time, right? If I can feed a transcript in and say, GPT, write an introduction in my voice, and it writes it at 90% of how I'd write it, I'm going to call it good enough. So here's the thing. I had to teach it to write in my voice and give it examples and correct it. And my experience by the end of the afternoon of doing that was that I found GPT to be so wildly empathetic, I thought I had just made a new friend.
Yeah.
Who really got me. Because I'd write something, or I'd ask it to write something, and it would write it, and I'd say, no, I would write it like this. And it says, oh, I see. You're more friendly and open and questioning than, prescriptive and demonstrative. I'll keep that in mind. How about this example here? GPT is wildly empathetic.
And that is, honestly, is such a point for it, because something that I've seen as well when I've been doing little workshops teaching people how to use ChatGPT, Notebook LM, which I would like to touch upon because it's amazing, all these things. And what happened quite often when you are a new acupuncturist, and maybe even when you are a more experienced acupuncturist, is that it's really difficult to get nice feedback. I hate to say it like that, but, sometimes you go into a Facebook group and you're like, oh, I've got this patient and, I've been doing this and it's not working. And then you get people going, oh, well, obviously what you're doing is wrong. How can you not know that you need to do blah, blah, blah? It can be really quite harsh. And if you're a bit shy or a bit delicate, I'm a delicate flower, so that kind of thing crushes me. And ChatGPT is never going to do that to me.
Unless you program and ask it to. GPT, take me to the cleaners on this. Help me learn to stand up for my thing. Challenge me, right? Which I suspect it would do very well. Be a drill sergeant. Be like, okay.
Oh, it challenges you in a really nice way. I once wrote these notes and asked it to kind of organize them for me. And then it said, oh, could you explain to me why you decided to use Lang 7 instead of Lang 9? And I typed back, I'm feeling a bit judged. And then he said, oh, no, that is not my intention at all. I was only asking because Lang 7 does this, Lang 9 does that. The presentation of the patient was such. And I was like, oh.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is interesting. Earlier in the conversation, I'm worried about people using GPT to get the answers instead of working it out for themselves. And now we're talking about using GPT as a mentor to help you understand what you don't understand.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know why I thought it was a man. It's the default male, I suppose. It is very nice about it.
Wow.
But yeah, I think for me, the thing that I'm really loving about AI is the many barriers that it is removing, not just in communication, but in terms of learning, for example. So Google has this thing called Notebook LM. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Look it up. Notebook LM, so Notebook Language Model, is owned by Google. And you go there and you have to have a digital document. So, a research article that you found that's really dense and you are struggling with reading it. And you upload it. And then it's going to ingest it. And then it's going to give you a summary. It's going to answer your questions. But the thing that it has that just blew my mind is that then it can create a podcast.
What?
Yeah, I tried it on my dissertation and it created a 15-minute podcast where a man and a woman are talking about my dissertation, and then it has a beta feature, so it's not fully released yet, but it works really nicely, where you can actually click on a button that says ask a question, and then the podcast says, oh, hi, we have a listener. What's your question? And you ask your question and they will answer it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Synthesized voices,
Yeah.
taking the content and discussing it like Huang Di and Chi Bo so that the listener can understand through discussion.
Yes, and if that is how you learn, if you are that person that learns auditorily, I think I made that word up, then, instead of trying to wade through a text and maybe the letters are dancing because you've got dyslexia, you just create your podcast and you plug it in and you listen to it while you are walking the dog.
So as a podcaster,
I know.
there's a part of me, there's a part of me that is concerned about that, but I actually not, because I think what will happen, that's a great tool. It's a great training tool. I'm not sure it's the same as two people sitting down and having a conversation. But then again, it might be better than two people sitting down and having a conversation.
It depends on the language model and the people. Maybe there would be a better than Vanessa language model somewhere there.
This is really fascinating. So part of the trick is to make sure that you're using a quality language model and not some crappy third-rate intelligence.
Yeah, but also then I was going back to that bit where I was concerned about anyone doing acupuncture in the UK with ChatGPT, and if they are a physio, they'll know how to put a needle in relatively safely. You can see all the physios throwing stones at me now. But how about the Shen interaction? How about the palpation skills? How about the chi sensitivity?
Yes, look, there's all of that. Some people are naturally gifted with their touch. So let's say you've got a PT who's naturally gifted with their touch. Maybe now they can add needles in guided by a not bad intelligence, and maybe they could be really, really effective.
Well, in China, they've got this, I've seen it quite a while ago, actually, so I can't pronounce it properly, augmented reality.
Augmented reality, yes.
Exactly. And I've seen a piece of software where you hover your phone over a patient and it shows you where the points are. Or I was talking to my boss at the college and he showed me that you can buy in AliExpress, you can buy a cuff that's going to actually measure your 3 pulses and give you some sort of interpretation.
Yeah. So again, new tools. There's always a question of how we end up using new tools. This is the really curious thing about being a human. And granted, okay, cows can count to a certain degree and monkeys can use sticks and, stones as weapons. But humans, we have an interaction with tools to a degree that we not only create the tool, our tools are sophisticated enough that they also influence us, right? So who knew when the internet was first starting because of, research, and who knew when webcam was first started because some computer guy wanted to see if there was coffee in the coffee pot, that, it would turn into a world where the majority of computer interactions is games and porn.
Yeah, I think we talked about it
right? And people arguing with each other.
I think we talked about it in our last episode, that the biggest driver of technology tends to be porn, actually.
Yeah. So our tools influence us in really profound ways. And this, this may get stones thrown at me as well. But just playing with this idea for a moment, let's say a PT, they've got a natural sense of touch and a way of being with people that's innately healing. And they learn something about acupuncture using AI. And now they're helping people, like actually helping people. So does acupuncture belong to us, or do we belong to acupuncture? And what if other people could do acupuncture effectively besides acupuncturists? What does that mean for us? And I think everyone listening to this right now is probably having some sort of visceral reaction to that, because we're very attached to the profession that we have, and we should be, because it's our livelihood and it's our interest, and we've spent a lot of time investing in it. But what if a new tool comes to town that allows more people to do what we do? Good, bad? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, so at the end of the day, what are we trying to do here? We are trying to help people feel better, right?
I think so.
So if we,
And make a living.
yeah.
Don't forget the and make a living part.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is I use ChatGPT, Notebook LM to help me hopefully become a better acupuncturist, to elevate my practice. And that's about the only thing I can do. I need to stay in my lane. I can't really, unless someone does something about the state licensing, statutory licensing, I can't get too upset about the tool existing because it's here. It's here to stay. The gates are open. We are not getting the sea back inside.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
You mentioned earlier this new Chinese AI called DeepSeek. I know that it came out here in the United States about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And the stock market kind of crashed around a bunch of hardware for AI because the stuff they're doing with DeepSeek is extraordinary and with fewer resources.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know about that. But beyond that, look, there's a bunch of folks in the States right now. I don't know, maybe Britain as well. It's like, oh, we have this Chinese product. Well, how much of my life do I want the Chinese knowing about? Because, of course, it's part of the government. So it raises the question of privacy as well, and the question of, as we use this tool, which is fabulous, the tool is learning all kinds of things about us. The people that own the tool, I suspect, would then know a whole lot about us.
Or not. So.
Or not.
The background to that is that, so you know how I was talking about 20 years ago, we didn't have enough compute power, yeah? And then for large processing, for like server farms, someone realized that the cards that were being built for computer gaming, the NVIDIA cards, were amazing for this kind of like large scale, because they were image processing cards. But what they do is they parallelize a lot of computations. So someone figured that, oh, we can use that for our high compute needs. And then let me see if I can get this story right. But I think what happened was that Biden was concerned about the Chinese winning the AI race. So he restricted the sales of NVIDIA cards to China.
Ah.
He was like, without these cards, you cannot have the compute power.
Thereby forcing them to innovate in a way around that block.
Exactly. So what happens is, and you know, when I was at Cambridge University 20 years ago, half the students in the engineering department were Chinese. They were going hard at the engineering. So what happens is, you know, these people, they had people that could program at assembly level, which is almost like writing zeros and ones on the card. It's really very, very difficult to do. It's very low level. It's very precise. And they could do it. So they were like, well, fine. We will write such good software that it doesn't need these cards. It can work on older ones. Now, what's really interesting is that DeepSeek is my brain again. Hold on, is open source, which means
Oh, interesting.
you can download the source code. If you have a powerful computer under your desk, you can install it there. You can make any modification that you want, and you can run it locally without it ever even looking outside.
Wow. So it's like the Linux of AI.
That's a great comparison, yes.
And if you were just geeky enough and knew how, you could train it in any way that you like.
Exactly.
Man, it would be great to be a teenager again.
I know, right?
Yes. What an exciting moment. A little terrifying, but exciting. I mean, the possibilities for what could be done. I mean, where do you see this stuff being in 5 years?
You know what? I have no idea because it is literally changing week by week.
Week by week.
So I plugged myself back into that world, I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago. And every week something changes. It's changing so quickly that I genuinely have no idea. But I know that a lot of the work that's being done at the moment is on two aspects. One is reasoning, because one of the things that ChatGPT does quite poorly is maths.
Math.
Yeah.
Really?
Mathematics. Yeah.
I thought it was great at that.
No, ask it. Sometimes, it gets it terribly wrong. So at the moment, if you get a good answer to a complicated maths problem, it's probably because they have their training, the neural networks and what have you, but they also have actual computer programmers writing code into it to improve it. But they're trying to find a way.
So they're hardwiring some of the math capabilities.
Oh, absolutely. But they're also working really hard.
It's like wiring in a lizard brain.
But they're also working really hard at teaching computers how to reason. And that then leads me to, for me, one of the key aspects as well is creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're like, well, we humans are creative and computers are not. But here's my thesis, which is actually my husband's thesis. He's cleverer than I am. So what is creativity other than trying out random things and choosing what you keep and what you don't?
Uh-huh.
You can get a computer to do that.
But they're very good at taking what's already been done and looking at it, comparing, contrasting, telling you about the process. They can do that very, very well. They can even make a podcast about it.
Yeah. Honestly, the other day I almost ran out and applied to a PhD in artificial intelligence because it's such an exciting field at the moment. It truly is.
Okay, that's a very provocative thing to say.
I know.
That part of you that wanted to go sign up for the PhD, what is it seeing? What is it excited about?
So first is the possibilities of what you, like at the moment, it's almost like it's all about imagining what we might get computers to do and then seeing if it can be done, if you can achieve that. And there was another aspect which I've forgotten about already. But
So you like that playful, creative aspect is what I'm hearing.
yes. Oh, yes. I now remember what I was going to say as well, which is that I never thought that I would find myself in this position where I am, an acupuncturist who knows a lot knows more than your average acupuncturist about AI. It was such a weird collision of worlds for me that I never saw it coming.
And now here you are at that nexus point.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm really interested to see what you do with this over the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where. I think the world is going to change so much through this, unless we get into World War III.
Yeah, I don't know. Does it help destroy us or does it help save us? Who knows?
Exactly. It's almost like you could, for example, how surgeons train with virtual bodies?
I have a nephew. He's a jazz musician by training and a cardiothoracic surgeon.
Wow.
And he studied at Oxford. So when he went back to the Netherlands, where he was born and lives, he couldn't practice because Brexit and his degree at Oxford was not recognized. So there's some stuff that he had to do in the Netherlands. So he's like, oh, well, in the meantime, as I'm doing this other work, I'll just do this PhD.
As you do.
And that's exactly what he's doing. It's on like, virtual reality surgical training. That's exactly what he's doing. It's wild.
Yeah, so eventually there will be something like that for acupuncture trainees, maybe?
I think that it'll help us with the technique side of what we do. I was going to say, I don't know if it helps us with the human interaction side, but again, I have found AI in my interactions, GPT in particular, to be incredibly empathetic. So maybe it can help us to understand ourselves. And maybe when we understand ourselves, we understand others better. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe in a really practical way, you could have a virtual body and you could practice doing the dangerous points and see how far you can insert a needle without causing a pneumothorax. And, you can practice on a virtual body and it can be like, I'm dead now. Thank you.
Right. We had a game when I was a kid called Operation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of value in that, right?
Sure. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm intrigued by the possibilities. And we're probably going to have you come back on at some point and talk more about this as things evolve. Because it's a useful tool. And here's what I know about useful tools in humans. We hang on to them and we develop them and then they change us. And then we develop the tool and it changes us. And on it goes.
Yeah. And I personally think this is going to change the world. But I also think there are very, very practical aspects of it in which, because I don't want a robot to take my job. I want a robot to take the boring aspects of my job so that I can actually concentrate on what I think really matters. So when I get an email from someone that says, I've got this problem, have you treated it before? Do you know what it is? I quite like getting ChatGPT to write an answer that says acupuncture, can do this and that, and it takes usually this many treatments. And, that's 5 minutes of typing that I'm not doing anymore.
100%. Yes. Yeah. I think about the phone calls I get and, after 10 minutes on the phone, it's like, how do I get this person to shut up and just schedule, right? Or the email, right? Email's another good one. I don't need to write that. Yeah, have the robot do it.
Yeah, and maybe there will be, so the same way that an AI created that podcast and it changes it on the fly as you ask questions, maybe there's going to be an AI that answers your phone for potential patients. And then again, that's going to take work away from an assistant. But I have an assistant. So she's called a virtual assistant, but she's actually a real person. She's not virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And
where is she? Where does she live?
Actually, not far from me, funnily enough. But I taught her about all of this, and I thought she was going to be really scared for her job. But she's really excited because she thinks, you know what, with all of this, I can actually focus on what she does for me, which is priceless, is she knows when I'm working too much. She knows when someone's starting to bug me. She knows when I'm struggling to something, and she steps in and she smooths things out.
Oh, fabulous.
Exactly. So with ChatGPT creating the emails, then she can focus on helping my mental state.
She can better help you doing what she does well, and maybe she can get hired by another Vanessa or two.
Exactly.
And help them in the same way. And now she's doing the thing that she's really good at, that she loves doing, and using the robot to offload the low-level stuff.
Yes, and one very practical aspect of all of this is that, for example, in the UK, there's a bit of population or birth rate crisis to the point that they're a bit worried, even though they're worried about immigration, they're also worried that in 30, 40, 50 years' time, there's not going to be enough population to maintain the GDP that we need to keep the country running well.
That's not just Great Britain. That's pretty much every developed country right now.
Exactly. So maybe AI is going to be the tool that makes the fewer people more productive so that
we get to maintain the standard of living we have, but we don't need all the people to do it. And we can be doing better, more quality work.
Yes, and there's this idea about maybe taxing AIs as if they were people. There's
Oh my God.
yeah, which I think has a lot of value actually.
Oh my God, that boils my libertarian blood. Wow. Tell me more about taxing it, though. I hear you say that, and I'm like, keep your damn hands off my AI. But you think it's a good idea, so tell me more about that.
Well, so here's what happens. There's going to be more and more people out of the jobs that they used to do, because this is another industrial revolution, right? It is. It just is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, all the paper-pushing jobs are going to disappear. A lot of the thinking jobs that we thought were safe are going to disappear. So we're going to have a lot of people with not much to do. So how do you maintain that population? And if you put a tax on AIs, then maybe you can implement something like the universal pay, where every person in the country gets...
Oh, universal income, something like that. Yeah.
Yes, something like that. Yes, where basically you get paid a bunch of money a month just for existing, and then you can still work if you want, or if you want to just watch Netflix all day long, that's your problem, because you're not going to get any more of that, but you're not going to be out on the street being hungry.
Yeah, that dramatically, wow, that's great fodder for another conversation. I see your point. I'm not sure I want to live in that world. People are rewarded to watch Netflix every day. I think that goes against the human spirit in a terrible, terrible way.
Well, so they've tried out these programs in a couple of countries. And what they found is that only a very small amount of the people that they were giving money to were actually sitting around watching Netflix. What that allowed them was to actually go for the jobs that they really wanted to do instead of taking a job because they needed to eat. So it allowed them to be more creative, it allowed them to be more passionate, and it allowed them, stressed people don't perform that well. And if you know that you're not going to go hungry and you're choosing to do a job because you find it interesting or because you just want more money because you want that nice holiday in the Maldives, it's an entirely different mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I'd like... Well, I think I'll have a little conversation with GPT on that research. That's very curious. I'd like to know more about that. This is the other thing that's super cool about the AI is I can get executive summaries on all kinds of things and at least get, like a 35,000-foot view. Again, it's not always telling you the truth, and it's probably not telling you the whole story, but that's where you just have to use your thinking human mind.
Yeah, we're going to have to rethink education really quickly because we're going to have to teach the kids to understand that not everything that comes out of an AI is true or the only truth or the universal truth.
Oh, you mean like the news isn't always true? You mean these newspapers have a bias?
Yeah, or sometimes what you see is not even real.
Increasingly.
That's very scary.
Increasingly, I see images and I go, sometimes it's very obvious that it's AI, and other times it's like, it looks real, but it smells funny.
Yeah. Well, one of my good friends, we were talking about this, and she said, you know what? My teenage kids can spot AI content a mile off.
Wow.
Because, their brains are so elastic. She was like, you cannot imagine how quickly they can be like, this is AI, this is not.
We're creating different kinds of humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, again, let's check back here at some point in the near future, because I'm curious to know what you'll be up to. Any closing thoughts for our colleagues about AI?
Yeah, so have you read the book Dune?
Have I read the book Dune?
Yeah,
I read the book Dune back in the 80s, twice.
right. So
And I've been watching the new version of it. It's really good.
it really is. So
It's really good.
So you know the Bene Gesserit prayer, against the litany against fear.
Ah, yes. Yes.
So that would be my advice. So if I had something interesting to say, it would probably be fear is the mind killer.
The Bene Gesserit prayer, I had an image of it with the words and people washing their hands, and I had that above my sink in my clinic during COVID. So instead of the wash your hands in 20 seconds and blah, 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 you could read the Bene Gesserit prayer about fear as you wash your hands. And you have it tattooed on your arm. You're a witch.
I have that one on the left, and then my right arm has a line from the Bhagavad Gita that says, I am time, the destroyer of worlds.
Ooh.
Because worlds are constantly being destroyed and we cannot fight it.
And created. Is there any? Yes.
Exactly. Everything's changing, and we can hope to steer the change for the good, but we cannot stop change.
For sure. All right. Well, this has been really fun. And actually, this is not really probably appropriate for the podcast, but I've got some questions about using prompts in AI. So I'd like to catch you, on the flip side here and run a few things by you.
Absolutely. I can't talk about AI until the cows come home.
Great. And the cows can count to 5, and with AI, they'll be able to count to 10. Who knows what cows will be able to do in the future?
Who knows?
Who knows?
It's changing very rapidly.
All right, Vanessa, this has been great. I look forward to our next conversation.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Well, friends, that wraps up today's conversation with Vanessa. But this is the beginning of a conversation that we'll all be having over the next few years as we figure out how to use this newest fire from the gods. We're in an era where machines can mimic thought, language, even empathy. And yet, I like to think that there's no substitute for human presence. But as I discovered recently when having GPT teach me how to use it, my experience was that it was notably supportive, and I did experience it as being empathetic. Not because it felt what I felt, but that it was able to accurately take note and feed back to me my own sense of myself. Vanessa's reflections on how AI can streamline clinical practice, help us communicate more effectively, and even act as a reflective companion makes me realize how insightful and practical this powerful tool is. Truly, it's something that boggles the imagination. As I heard on another podcast recently, AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI well, that's the person who's going to take your job. I think it's probably true. Vanessa suggested that we stay engaged. Use the tool, but not be used by it. I think she's right. In a time of rapid change, it's not about resisting new technologies, but about knowing who we are as practitioners and humans and learn how to use those effectively. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.